I want to talk about the Strait of Hormuz and the insurance piece of this puzzle. So we're trying to put all of these big money pieces together. And of course, President Trump, I think last week or whatever it was, came out and said, just take your ships through there. The United States will backstop this insurance. Now, we've seen, obviously, people never really think about like Lloyd's of London and like war risk premiums and shipping guarantees when there's bombs and missiles involved in all of this. Can you unpack the insurance piece of this story?
So one of the very first things 3.5 years ago I realized is the oligarchs that sit at the big table, they all started out life owning an industry, an insurance company, and a bank. That's how interlocked this world that they live in is. And the insurance companies come in to play like, not to be overly simplistic, but during 9/11, we all heard about the asbestos issue. And, if you bring down those towers, you don't have to worry about the abatement issues of asbestos. They're just gone and you collect your insurance. And that has happened throughout history where they want something gone or they want the business of rebuilding something. It's kind of like the Phoenix program. Just burn it all down. We have the fires out in California. Just burn it all down and we'll build back what we want. And the insurance companies are all there to bail them out. So along those same lines,
just to be clear, I mean, I worked in real estate, I know it very well. To get asbestos removal, it's very costly. So you have to do that, and especially if the city knows about it, the county knows about it. The abatement for asbestos is very costly. So to avoid having to pay that, you just tear it all down, burn it all down.
Correct. You have an accident. Right.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's exactly the point. So if you go back in time, you find out that the insurance company, Lloyd's of London, obviously is very old. At no time in the history of Lloyd's of London ever, no matter what the war was, have they ever not extended coverage. They just upped the premium. This is the first time ever. Well, why would that be? Because in every other instance, Lloyd's of London and MI6, which they're just, located very closely together, Lloyd's of London and their insurance empire has allowed MI6 and the intelligence agencies, because they insert agents into the insurance industry because they're literally all over the world, especially a shipping one. So prior to World War II, you had a company called CV Star over in Asia, and they were basically like the Lloyd's of London over there. He was part of the OSS operation during World War II. He goes on to be part of the CIA. There's CIA people working in the CV Star insurance, empire over there. Well, we now know CV Star as AIG. It's the same company. And of course, AIG had a big role in the whole 9/11. They were part of the office structure that was there. So people need to think of not the insurance company, but the insurance company actually functions as a source of intelligence for governments, especially Lloyd's of London and the relationship with the Crown and MI6. You also notice that for the first time in my lifetime, British is not right beside America.
Right.
And yes.
What does that tell you?
It's not unrelated.
Okay, so paint the picture for us here. Why did the UK stay out of this? They wouldn't even let us use their bases.
Right, because they don't want Iran to go away. If you go back to the history of Iran after the overthrow in 1953, the MI6, the CIA, and eventually Mossad all go in and train up the Savak, which is the national police intelligence apparatus that was creating black sites and torturing people and kidnapping people. They were the state function of the terror regime under the Shah. So if you disagreed with the Shah, you would get arrested, you'd go to a black site prison, you'd be tortured, blah, blah, blah. So that was the duties of the Savak. It was Major General Norman Schwarzkopf Sr., who was hired basically by the CIA to set the system up. So in 1979, during the revolution, they didn't disband the Savak, they renamed it. We know it as the Republican Guard now. And there are lots of ties between the Republican Guard because from my research, they're part of this strategy of tension. As long as you have Iran there, then Israel is always going to have an enemy that they can create crises in the Middle East. And that allows this international syndicate to control the area. And that's what they want more than anything. They want to be able to control geographical regions. Well, what happens when Iran goes away or has a legitimate government that's not causing strife all over the world or funding Hezbollah or whatever? Well, then you have peace. And that's the worst thing that could ever happen to these people because their power comes from the strategy of tension and people being at each other's throat all the time. You're not allowed to have coalitions. You're not allowed to have peace in a specific region that they have their strategy of tension disciples in.
Well, don't you hate when people say, I told you so? Yeah, that's me, actually, because I did tell you, sorry, but I told you that gold and silver were going to reap the benefits of excessive money printing, the Fed just printing money like crazy, overvalued markets, global unrest. It's here. It's happened. Gold and silver have both soared to all-time highs. So I hope you called our friends at Lear Capital and you bought some. If you didn't, trust me, it's not too late. Experts are predicting even higher prices ahead. And they get it. They know what's coming. Isn't it time, folks? Get yourself some gold and silver today. Call the best in the business. I personally use them. So does Natalie. We both do. And our kids do as well in their IRAs. Lear Capital, it's a free phone call. There's no obligation to purchase, just education information on protecting and growing your wealth with gold and silver. I'm sure there are many of you that have called and haven't purchased yet for whatever reason. Don't make the same mistake twice. Now is the time to get some gold shipped directly to you or shift some dollars in your retirement accounts over to physical gold and silver. It's easy to do. Natalie and I have done it for both, and I've been extremely satisfied with Lear's knowledge, their service, their prices. I urge you to call today and learn more. Call them, 1-800-613-3557, or go to LearRedacted.com, and you can receive up to $20,000 in free bonus medals with a qualified purchase. So then the London insurance market, remains, of course, central to this Gulf shipping, but now they're saying we're not going to insure. To your point, they've never done this before. So what does that tell us?
Well, it tells me that they are trying everything they can to not allow or move forward in eliminating the threat. What does it cost them as an insurance company to increase astronomically the wartime premiums, to your point, to ensure the shipping continues? Well, if they're trying to be a negative vote in what is going on, that's part of the strategy that they would lay in is, okay, well, we're just out. We're not going to do that. All they did in the past was triple or quadruple the premiums of the ships transiting the straits. It's not the first time that there's been problems in the Strait of Hormuz, and they have never stopped coverage, ever.
So they want the threat to continue.
They want the regime that's in place to continue. They want the Republican Guard to remain in place because that is their tool in their toolbox to create the instability in the region.
And this strategy of tension sits at the heart of it. So for our audience that maybe isn't familiar with when we've had you on previously to talk about this strategy of tension, once you understand it, this like funnel or this, I guess, a sieve of the strategy of tension, then everything has to pour through it and it all makes sense. It all helps us make sense of why keeping us sort of in this permanent state of chaos is so profitable for these people. Maybe you could just explain to our audience a little bit here Then I want to take a break and I want to come back and talk about regime change and all that stuff. But maybe you could lay out for our audience the strategy of tension and why we're all being played.
So to your point, it basically boils down to creating chaos so you can implement the control structure that. So in the past, when they needed to do regime change in a particular country, they would go in with survey teams and they would find out where the differences are. So if I was doing a regime change in Iraq, I would look at the Shia, I would look at the Ba'ath Party, and I would look at the Kurds. So there's their friction point. And then I just stage false flags dressed up as Kurdish people against the Ba'ath, or the Shia people dressed up against the Kurds. And this false flag then exacerbates the strategy of tension. And I use that as an excuse to go in and throw out the current government that I no longer believe I have control over. And they did it in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, the recent coup that they had there, they looked at the marginalized people that were kind of categorized as DEI, the transgender, that they were trying to morph into a much bigger presence there. And of course, that went against their religious beliefs and stuff like that. And they used that as a wedge to get people, because you don't have just those people, you have people that sympathize with those people as well, to create your boots on the ground, the jack boots. And then they use the people that come out to quote unquote protest as the mechanism. They throw in a bomb, supposedly from some other radical element in the country. You see it here with Antifa. They keep people in this heightened sense of being terrorized, the chaos, in order to control us.
It is about total control. Now, one of the pieces, of course, you're hearing now is also about like sleeper cells, right? So I can't help when I hear like Iranian sleeper cells in the United States, they're being activated. You know, you need that fear at home. So I can't help when I hear these types of stories, my mind immediately goes to false flags, strategy of tension, keeping us in this like permanent state of chaos. And maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe there's not. What do you make of this like Iranian sleeper cells in the United States part of the story?
So I'm concerned about sleeper cells in general, not because those are basically stay behind units. So the CIA has been notorious for taking, and I'll give you an example. When you go into Vietnam and you're in Laos and you're in Cambodia, in order to effect all of that, you have people working for the CIA. Well, when the CIA has to pull back out of Vietnam, they bring with them the people that worked for them. You just had the guy from Washington State go shoot 2 National Guard people in Washington, D.C., and we find out that he worked for the CIA in Afghanistan. This happens all the time. All of the people in Cuba that worked with the CIA were brought into Miami. And what happened to that entire Cuban exile? Well, we created a military training base and deployed them down to Guatemala to overthrow the government down there. They were in Nicaragua. They were part of the Iran-Contra. They've destabilized the entire Latin American community out of this pool of Colombian expats. This is a known tactic of the CIA. And so we have all kinds of sleeper cells in the United States in these refugee, that's the word they use. But most of the refugees, and the CIA even has a cutout through the State Department of people they can vouch for that doesn't even go through the normal vetting process of a refugee. There's a quota given to the CIA to bring these people in. Most people don't even know that. These people are trained assassins that were under the command of the CIA. Some of them remain on the payroll of the CIA for decades.
Jesus. I mean, this is, and then when you hear about the destabilization in these regions, right? I mean, the mass, when we bomb Somalia, then suddenly we have Somalian refugees in the United States. Like, that's how this works inside the U.S. It's very convenient what's probably about to happen in Europe as well. So am I maybe reading too much into that, or how many of
that's exactly what happens. I mean, Ilhan Omar's dad was one of the colonels that worked for the CIA. Mondami's dad was brought over from Africa on a CIA front scholarship and remained here. Obama's dad came over on one of them.
All right, then I'm not crazy. You know, because sometimes you go to like a dinner party or something, you start talking, people are like, that can't possibly be the case. We destabilize these countries, now are filled with these refugees in the U.S., and suddenly all of this chaos continues to happen. Look what's happening in Chicago. Look what's happening in Minnesota.
It's the plan.
It's all part of the plan, and we're just pawns on it. I want to take a quick break, and I want to come back and talk about the sort of what is the end game here with Iran? Is there an end game? How does this thing maybe spiral out of control? What more chaos can we expect from that? So we're going to get to that in a second with Colonel Towner-Watkins. But first,